Good evening, everybody. My name is Lanzo, coming to you live from the end of the world, and we're back again for another world building live stream. Let's go ahead and before I go too far into my diatribe, let's make sure that everybody can see and hear me. All the bars are green, so I'm going to assume that you can. Press the panic button located conveniently under your chairs if you can't see and hear me, and then we'll adjust from there. Good evening, how are we all? Say hello in the chat. Hello all. This evening we're going to be doing some more world building for the Jewel Cities of Talavar, which we've been doing for months and months now. We're getting to be old veterans at this stage. We have got like 400 pins on our world map for this region. Now we hit the 400 threshold last week. And today we're going to work on we're going to focus on a specific region. We're going to focus on the Howling Badlands, which is a desert region in the north of the Jewel Cities. I've done a little bit of work. I say a little bit, actually quite a lot. I haven't added any pins, but I've made significant progress on this area in the last week. I had a pretty major breakthrough, so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to get stuck in and see how we can put that breakthrough into practice when it comes to adding locations that our players can interact with and cool stuff that can happen. Hello all. First time for the stream, actually in the same country. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead here and switch over to our desktop view. You can see here the map of the Jewel Cities of Talavar. The map was made in Incarnate, and the program that we're going to be using this evening to do all of our world building is Legend Keeper. I usually have links that post when I push the buttons, but they don't seem to be doing anything. Eric from Fryman is here, everyone. Round of applause. How you doing, buddy? Thank you for stopping by. I'm just trying to figure out why my Stream Deck doesn't want to push the buttons. Normally it pushes the buttons. Didn't want to push the buttons. That's fine. Does it take inspiration from a specific region IRL like Ashwas, or is it hodgepodge of inspirations? It doesn't take any specific inspiration from any regions. I've tried with this set into distance from the taking specific inspiration for whole regions, and I'm trying to build much more on my own world lore this time around. This will be my third campaign. I've spent 5 or 6 years in this region or in this world now, building stuff out. So I'm trying to build on the existing lore for new places rather than drawing on real world places. Are you considering to release your worlds as a book? Yes, kind of. So I have been working on a player's guide for the Jewel Cities, primarily to give to my actual players in the run-up to playing this campaign. So it'll have an introduction to the world and to the places in the Jewel Cities, some of the factions and the gods and stuff. But I will be making that available to my patrons at the $10 tier. That is a very good point. While it is on my mind, I'm going to do it right now whilst on stream. I have a Discord, which, if the button works, let's see, did it? Yeah, OBS must have broken all the Stream Deck plugins, which is never fun. Let me go ahead here and pull up the Stream Deck option, and at least I can copy paste the links and things. So that is the link to the Discord. In the Discord, there is a channel for the Jewel Cities of Talavar. Up until this point, it has been private and only for my patrons, but I put a poll up this week asking if the patrons are minded it becoming public, which they did not, so I am just going ahead and changing all the permissions for that now. So just give me a second. If Discord wants to play ball, let's drag it into tabletop role playing, and then we should be able to just inherit the permissions. Sync with tabletop role playing, sync permissions. That didn't work. That didn't work at all. Hello, how are we? Why don't you work? Players. Oh, maybe it did work. Seems as though everyone can see it. Everyone can see it. So yes, the link to my Discord. There is a Discord server. If you go in there, there is a Jewel Cities channel that I've just made public to everybody. So now we can all talk about the stuff that goes on in stream between streams. Can you share what you use to keep your hair shiny? Do you use conditioner? I do use conditioner, and I have not long had a bath, so it is still reasonably wet, which is hence the sheen. Right, I'm gonna do this now. Right, Discord is fine and sorted. And any other bookkeeping before we dive straight into it? Yes, there is bookkeeping. I have a Kickstarter. Can't believe I've almost forgot about this. I did this last week. Got like 2 hours into the stream before I remembered I have a Kickstarter. So the annual for SideQuest, which is my monthly magazine, is on Kickstarter at the moment. I'm taking the first 12 issues of my magazine, which is packed with 5th edition compatible content, and I'm bundling them together, making them available in print for the first time in a hardback book. That is currently on Kickstarter. I will drop the link, if I can find it, in the chat. Let me go ahead and drag the tab out so I can go into the back end and get you the right link. You'd think that I would be more prepared, and I thought I was until the Stream Deck betrayed me. Everything was going so well until that betrayed me. There we go, there's the Kickstarter link. Right, I think that's all of the plugin I need to do so we can actually start doing some world building. Elgis says, wow, we got a lot more pins than last time. Yes, we have got a lot more pins. We've been busy. Bob straight in there with the scythe tree. Been waiting patiently for me to say, right, it's time to start doing some world building. And then you're like, here we go. I'm ready. So the scythe tree. Pathfinder 2E. The water bottle has times, and it says, get started. Remember your goal. Keep chugging. Don't give up. Almost there. You did it and refill. I've never actually read it. Scythe tree. Let's go ahead. Scythe tree. That's a gnarly looking beast. We love it. Okay, the scythe tree is a CR6 creature, so let's go ahead and see whether we've got anywhere that we can put it. We can probably get it in up here. Let's drop in scythe tree. CR6 creature. We're going to use the monster template. We're going to make it hidden, create our page and pin. We probably want to bring that so it's not in the mountains. Is there a crown redeemer for location ideas or monster lair count? So if you want to drop location ideas in, you are more than welcome to. Let me go ahead and see what the redeems actually are. So monster lair would work if you've got if your idea is more of a kind of random encounter or a quest type thing. There's a random encounter one. There's also naming a location if there's somewhere specific on the map. We've got some unnamed cities and things, but throw down a monster lair or a random encounter. They're both 1,000 crowns. Or if it's magic item focused, there's a magic item one as well. Let's go ahead and hide the scythe tree, and then we are going to scroll up. So for those of you that have been watching the stream for a little while, you'll notice the biggest change this week is that the Howling Badlands has changed color. So this previously was your typical kind of beige sand color for a desert, and I had a breakthrough in kind of the thinking about this region of the world during the week, and everything has changed to be slightly red tinted. So the reason behind this is in the Howling Badlands there is two kind of predominant factions, elves and dwarves, and I knew that the elves were red elves and that the dwarves are cinder dwarves, and they have kind of a red tint to them to a degree. So we are changing the law for the Howling Badlands. Changing probably not the right word. We didn't really have any law for the Howling Badlands other than its name up until now. So we are adding law to our Howling Badlands. Eric, the hexes are 24, 25 miles. 25 miles, it makes it easier to round. Katka says, how did I change the map and still have all the pins? So in Legend Keeper, if you go up to the 3 dots, you can click replace map. As long as the map that you are uploading to replace the existing one is the same dimensions, it will do nothing to the pins. Sometimes they might drift by a couple pixels, which when you're zoomed all the way out doesn't matter. When you zoom all the way in and you like your pins all to be nice and tidy, it can be a little frustrating, but it's no big deal. So yes, the Howling Badlands. This region used to be a dominion of the elves known as the Eltrith Dominion, and the elves ruled over this. They had come over from the Everglades, that's the name of the place where the elves come from. They'd come over, they'd settled this region. There used to be a great big forest here. And then one day a group of dwarves come along, and these dwarves, they find a resource called cinder. Now, dwarves in my setting are, when they grow old, instead of dying of old age, they slowly begin to petrify and turn to stone. Their kind of creation myth says that Kovaz, the smith, the god of creation and the principal god of the dwarves, made the first dwarves by carving them from stone and imbuing them with magical metal. So when they age, instead of just dying of natural causes, provided something else doesn't bump them off in the meantime, they slowly start to petrify until they turn to stone. And they've got a whole big ritual as how when they turn to stone, they get shipped off back to the dwarf capital city, and they all get put in a vault underground, kind of terracotta warrior style, ready to one day all be unpetrified in the service of the Dwarven Empire. But yeah, the important thing is they petrify. Chaos Dwarf Wizard, yeah. So they petrify, and this group of dwarves that came over and found themselves in the Eltrith Dominion, in this vast forest that used to be where the Howling Badlands are now, they started a mine, as dwarves do. And whilst mining, they found this red kind of crimson crystal called cinder, and the cinder allows them to kind of slow the petrification process and not completely undo it, but certainly means that they can prolong their lives well beyond normal kind of dwarf lifespans. But it has the side effect of driving them absolutely mad. It makes them rageful and impulsive and gives them fiery tempers. So you can imagine that when the elves found out that, you know, a bunch of dwarves are mining underneath their precious forest, they're not too happy about it. Things kick off into a war, and depending on which side of the story you believe, either the elves attack the dwarf mine and in the fight kind of trigger a magical explosion, or the dwarves took a magic bomb to the elf capital and basically blew it up. But whichever one of those is true, and I don't know which is true. I don't think we need to know which is true. I think it's much more realistic if there are two sides and you don't have a definitive answer, because it's, you know, over 1,000 years in the past. So this magical explosion goes off, cinder erupts and basically irradiates the entire area. This whole forest kind of gets blown up and is turned into a magical irradiated wasteland as kind of the particularized cinder fills the atmosphere and slowly settles. And as a result of that, now, you know, 1,000+ years later, the sands of this region, the trees are all long gone, but the sands of this region all have like a hue shift towards red. Thinking of Dwarven Guy Fawkes, yeah, kind of. So that is why we have the red shift in our sands, and that is why the two predominant kind of ancestries that live up there, the dwarves and the elves, have got this kind of red bias to them. So the dwarves are still mining and using cinder to prolong their lives, and the elves have lived basically nomadic lives in the desert. This is still, they consider it to be their dominion, even though the forest is gone. So they kind of sail the red sand seas on these magical skiffs, and 1,000+ years of living here has slowly turned their skin red from exposure to the kind of particularized cinder. So that's the deal with our Howling Badlands. They're called the Howling Badlands because they're in the nighttime. There is a deadly wail on the air that people say are the souls of those killed during kind of like the big cinder explosion that are still clinging to the material plane. Lego Firehawk Cinder Deathport, a land-based port where the Red Elves take their magical glider skiff chariots full of wooden or stone areas, look like typical docks. The Elves park their vehicles home to an Elven captain, used at the base of the operation. That's awesome. We will put that somewhere far away from the dwarves, because otherwise bad things will happen. So we've already got the Voiceless Well, which is a former elf settlement. Suffered some kind of tragedy. We now know that that tragedy is the tragedy of the entire Dominion, getting blown up. So some of them operate from here, and we'll put it up in here, and we will play create page. Nope, it's not create page. I knew I was hovering for a reason. Create from template. Cinder Dust Port. So we're going to go ahead and choose our template, and this is a settlement. So we're going to hide it. And then hide our pin, and then we're just gonna copy that whole bunch of text and paste it right there. Save your work. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I would forget if it wasn't there. I leave the prompt in my queue until the end of the stream, because if I dismiss it now, I will forget by the end of the stream. So it just reminds me to save it all. It's like, I want to say 3-4 weeks ago, I had a tab to the Jewel Cities page. I'd made a tab for something, and I thought, I don't need this tab anymore, and went to delete it, and I didn't quite click on the tab properly. Like, I right-clicked and didn't get the context options that you normally get, which would have allowed me to delete it. So instead I went up to the 3 dots and hit delete, thinking it would delete the tab. Just deleted the whole page and the 325 pins I had at the time. So I had to go through and manually restore them all. So hence now we have the save your work redeem, because otherwise that will happen again. Right, so we've got the Howling Badlands, and we already know a couple of things about this place. So we know the Red Elves live there. They are kind of nomadic. They drive these magic skiffs and kind of sail the Red Dune Sea. We know that the dwarves are still digging and kind of mining this material that they're using to prolong their lives. And we know that the entire region will be scattered with ancient battlefields from the conflict between these elves and dwarves. Kind of most of this predates the decision to kind of make it a magically irradiated wasteland. Like Bloodstone Pass, it was the site of a terrific battle between the Cinder King of Cinnabar's forces and the Red Elves. So it's still littered with the red stained bones of Cinder Dwarves. That existed before we decided that, the whole region was going to be red. So it's working out nicely. Obsidian Anubis says, what are your thoughts on Sirenscape and other music options to use music in your games? I sometimes use music. Sometimes use music. Words are hard. I sometimes use music. I tend to use it fairly sparingly. And something that I've been enjoying a lot recently is using really contemporary music, almost like a film score. So my players recently went to the Feywild and battled against a creature from SideQuest called a Fossogrim, who plays magical music. And as part of that encounter, the players basically had a battle of the bands and were playing music at each other. So the Fossogrim was playing... Thanks for stopping by, dude. I really appreciate it. So the Fossogrim was playing popular music. He started by kind of charming them into thinking they were in a bog surrounded by witches, and I had some Black Sabbath playing. And then they came back, and the bard was like, right, I'm going to play a song. And I was like, well, what song is going to be your battle song? And they're like, oh, this Rush song. So we put Rush on. And then that battle ended, and the bard got access to a new spell that basically allows them to summon a bunch of ghost Vikings. And we used... I want to say Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song for that, and that's gone down a treat. So I do like to use music and sound effects and stuff, just don't always have the time to set it up. Probably lots of craters from large projectiles are ejected in the explosion, full of rare materials to be fought over. The area around Ground Zero may look like the surface of the moon. I'm thinking that the Ground Zero might be one of these basins, possibly this one up here, which would explain why there's no outlet rivers to it, and it's just an evaporative basin. Bob says, didn't you also have a doll playing? Yes, I did. So in Foundry, you can place location proximity based sound effects. So I recorded myself like sing-songing a nursery rhyme, did a little pitch correction on it to make it sound significantly creepy, and had that so that when one of the players went over to this part of the battle map, they could just hear this like creepy possessed doll singing this little tune to them, which was very good, because when the other players were like, we can't hear anything, and started approaching, the player put it in their bag, so I turned it off. So all the other players were either like, what are you talking about? There is no sound. There is nothing here. You go in round the bend. But the one player was like, honestly, there was something here. It was a little doll. It was singing to me. I swear, I'm not mad. So using sound effects like that can be a lot of fun. Right then, so Howling Badlands. Let's think about what we want to add here. So we've already got some stuff. We know that there's going to be some kind of sandstorms and caves. We know we've got some abandoned forts and ancient tombs. We've got a couple of different monsters that exist out in here. Some battle sites, a couple of cities for the dwarves, a couple of small settlements for the elves. But I want to think of some specific stuff that we can get placed down based on the knowledge and the context of that conflict between the Cinder Dwarves and the Red Elves. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up my Excel spreadsheet, my master book, which has got all of my generators in it. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to generate some points of interest. And normally I have the column for the point of interest, what region it's in, and who the dominant citizens are. But we're going to just generate a couple and see what we get that we can apply the context of it being in the Howling Badlands. So we get traveling soldiers. So if we go ahead here and jump back over here and then have a quick look and see whether there are any traveling soldiers. We've got a little battle between some dwarves and some elves, but that's fine. Do you know when you're going to release the Excel? When it's done, it's not a kind of official project. It's something that I do as and when, mainly when I am doing either stream stuff or getting ready to stream, or just doing world building in general. So it's a very as and when project at the moment. You had the halfling traveling. Yes, there's a bunch. There's halfling militia going towards the Flaming Halfling Festival, but I think we could probably have some dwarven soldiers, maybe on the way to or coming back from Bloodstone Pass. So we'll put them within sort of 25 miles of Bloodstone Pass. And if I zoom in here, you can see I've added a bunch of like cracked texture to the ground to kind of emulate that feel that this place is really seen some stuff. So let's go ahead and point of interest. Traveling dwarf soldiers. Go ahead and hide that pin. Could do something like a petrified artillery, such as catapults from one side, now covered in dust, causing them to deteriorate extremely slowly. That's definitely something that we could add into Bloodstone Pass. That very much fits the idea of Bloodstone Pass, this famous battle site that's still littered in corpses. So either on the way to or from Cinnabar. I'm going to go ahead and hide that pin, and let's generate another example. So this is some kind of underwater location. So we've got these two lakes, so we can figure out if there is something under them. I don't want to put anything that would definitively say that one of these is kind of ground zero for the actual explosion that caused the Howling Badlands to become such. But we could definitely have evidence of there being kind of battle, or that it might have been a crater of some kind from the battle, so we can have kind of evidence of there being an underwater battlefield for sure. I think if we put it near Cinnabar, it's too close to the Bloodstone Pass, so we'll go ahead and we'll put it here. So we'll go ahead, create from template. It's going to be a point of interest, and it's going to be a sunken battlefield. So if for any reason the players have cause to go into the water here, then they would discover kind of the remnants of some kind of battlefield. Remnants of a battle fort here before the basin filled. How big was the ancient explosion? Nuclear bomb explosion? Broadly, it's going to be kind of equivalent to some kind of like, not necessarily nuclear bomb level inside of the explosion, but in terms of the idea of the fallout, because it's the fallout that I'm thinking is going to have kind of destroyed the forest and paved the way for what is now this desert, from all of the particulates kind of being jettisoned out and landing all across this area, and then being taken up into the roots of the trees, and the trees kind of dying and withering and crumbling into almost like crystalline forms, which then get eroded and eventually become sand. So the explosion isn't too important, like the size. Its location probably is. It probably wasn't here, because I imagine that the fallout would probably have managed to bypass the mountains. Maybe not. So it may have happened, you know, up here somewhere where the elves were living. The specifics, given that it was so long ago, aren't super important. We more want to suggest that this is a region that has like a long history and was something else. So maybe in our kind of sunken place, there's still evidence of trees here. Like this basin may have just been like some lowland or something. Maybe it's a natural land formation, because, you know, it's pretty big. Maybe it was a valley that was filled with trees, and after the explosion it kind of caused change to the weather, and over time it's filled, and because it's filled, it's not had as devastating of an impact from the fallout. You know, all of these things are things that we can kind of just suggest towards, because this happened like 1800 years ago. It happened long enough that there's no reason to think that many people will be alive, so that we can really play with the truth, and we don't have to have a hard line of here's exactly what happened, but we can present the version of events from the point of view of the dwarves and from the point of view of the elves if the players encounter them. So if the players come into this region, there are two factions in this region at play, and, you know, we create a choice point where the players can choose to side with either, and both sides can be telling them a story, neither of which is necessarily true. Both of them could be complete lies, but both sides will be telling a story that places their faction as being the wronged and the ones that were the fighting for the right reasons, and poses that the enemy side was the ones that did all the terrible things. And then we sprinkle through all these little bits of showing the world as it was, to show kind of how this region has advanced. So if the players went underwater in this region and saw, you know, the flooded trees, they could get that sense of, oh, all of this did used to be forest, and then terrible things happened. That's the idea anyway. Whether or not the players even go there, who knows? But as I've said, a couple of times before, my intention when I started building the Jewel Cities out was I'm going to make it big enough to run multiple campaigns in, and my kind of grand idea is that this is where my games are going to be set for, you know, multiple years, multiple campaigns set within the Jewel Cities. So I'm fine if the players never go to the Howling Badlands, because, you know, next campaign. Okay, so our next point of interest is some kind of medicinal herb. That seems like an ideal one to put in this kind of decayed tree region around this lake, this basin. So we'll go ahead and put medicinal herbs. We don't really need anything more than that at this stage. We just know that there are some herbs there. They maybe have medicinal properties. Ideal to use if we have a plot hook that involves any kind of medicine or any kind of alchemy or finding ingredients or anything like that, which is ideal because then we don't have to do a huge amount of work, but we've got enough work there that we can build on if and when the players go near it. We're getting a lot of like a really appropriate but already existing ones like disaster sites and archaeology sites and things. An archaeology site could be cool, so uncovering some ancient relic, I think that works really nicely for the elves. So having an elf archaeological site, elven archaeological site. So here the elves, the red elves, would have found something from the Eltrith Dominion, and they'll be digging it up out of the ground. So the red elves have found excavating. That's not it. That is it. First try. And are excavating it. So what that is, again, isn't necessarily important right now, but we know we have it as our point of interest. So if the players are in this hex and we want them to encounter something, they can encounter this elven archaeological site, and before the session itself I can figure out what is actually there. Maybe if it were the first thing that they were coming across, say maybe the players are like, oh, we want to have started up north and come into the Jewel Cities region from the north, and this is going to be one of the first things they find. Well, it needs to be fairly minor because they're going to be low level and all that kind of stuff. If they're going there at a high level, well, maybe this is something pretty significant. You know, the players might be of a power level that they can actually impact on the political stage, the kind of conflict between the elves and the dwarves in this region. So maybe whatever's being uncovered here is pretty significant. And if the players are aligned with the dwarves, they find this, the dwarves are going to want to know that. The dwarves are probably either going to want to stop it or take it for themselves. If the players are aligned with the elves, they're going to want to get that back to, you know, the heart of elvendom in the desert and prevent the dwarves from having it. You could also do an optional archaeological faction that is neutral and just looking for the truth, but the desert dwellers don't want them to make them out to be villains. Absolutely. You know, there are a couple of kind of minor factions in my world that deal with kind of hunting into the past and archaeology and stuff like that. So having them involved and trying to find out the actual truth, if the players kind of latch on to that idea of what is the truth in this situation, that neutral faction could be a good way to facilitate them getting it without having to ally with one side. Iona Montang, Centaur, either as a guard captain in one of the cities with some sort of traveling paladin, maybe with a party of crusaders on their way to the demon cult in the Badlands. Demon cult. Now, are we talking the demon cult from last week with Jeremy, or a different demon cult? Because I can't remember whether there are other demons in the Badlands. There's a sand dragon. What's the Rusted Sepulchre? A monument for some kind of iron giant themed baddie. That's fine. I don't think we've put demons, so we can put Iona above the sand dragon, you think? Okay, let's go have a look. Above the sand dragon. Oh yeah, that is well remembered. So the cult of Hyan, I believe, worship the Sand Dragon. Yeah, Hyan the Terrible. So not demonic, but still a cult, a draconic cult. And we can absolutely have some paladins or a party of crusaders operating in this region. We want to put them a little bit away, so we don't want them right on the doorstep, but we can definitely put them here. So let's go ahead and go crusaders. Hidden, create page, and then copy and paste that and get that in there, and then hide the pin. Oh, I misremembered then. Yeah, still good. I mean, if you want more, I don't think we've got demons going on. We've got a sand dragon, and then we've got the absolutely grotesquerie that is the Elder Wormwraith that's harvesting souls. But the Sand Dragon is definitely has a known cult that operate in the area. So having some kind of questing crusader definitely works for that. Go ahead and mark that off. Manage rewards. Markers complete. While I'm in this page and I can see it, if you're not already following the channel, go ahead and give us a follow. We're like 3 followers away from our current goal of 390 people following the channel, which would be super cool to hit this evening. So if you aren't already, click the button. Click the button. Pull the lever, crunk. Let's go ahead and... Didn't mean to click on the giant crawling claw. We want our generators again. And see what we can come up with. Some kind of smuggler's cache. So let's go ahead and figure out what someone would be smuggling here. Now, my immediate thought is the cinder, the crystal that the dwarves are using to kind of prolong their life. But we've got a lot of that in this region. Something that we could do, though, is we could take the concept of the smuggler and have someone run in cinder somewhere else. So they could have kind of a cinder trade, a shady cinder trade underground somewhere. The only other place I know that there are definitely dwarves is in Shimmer in the Vale. And the Vale's already pretty popular, populated with pins. Why not smuggle in the petrified dwarves? Oh my god. Yes. That is pretty cool. Smuggling petrified dwarves. Someone could be taking the petrified dwarves to the Howling Badlands to be experimented on, to be like, okay, can we use the cinder to reverse this? Or is there anything we could learn from that? That'd be pretty cool. So let's have a look. I think we'll go and we'll put that down in Jasper. Petrified dwarf smuggler is a material specifically only effective on dwarves. Does also work on other ancestries. Only on dwarves. So their petrification as a peoples only affects them. It's not like they've been petrified by a basilisk or a Medusa or a creature. It's a natural part of their aging, and this material kind of prolongs that through magic. But other races that aren't magically petrifying as they age aren't gonna kind of suffer the same effects and won't get the same benefits from the cinder crystals. Let's go ahead and hide that, and then go ahead and hide the pin. Oh, excuse me. And then, so, someone is smuggling petrified dwarves up to Cinnabar to be experimented on. yes, it is very much a Born of Stone, Return to Stone arrangement. They believe that their god carved them from stone and imbued them with magic, and that their life ends. As their life ends, it's only natural that they return to the stone. I trimmed my mustache, and I've got one errant hair that is poking me, and it is very, very annoying. Imagine just walking around picking up defenseless dwarves to sell. Exactly. Like, I say that it'll happen in Jasper. I'm thinking that this is like a multinational smuggling operation. You know, they're shipping dwarves in. Navtal redeemed a dungeon. Dwarf miners digging deep into the rock came at buried ruins of a long-lost ancient elven temple, once located atop a nearby mountain. It was toppled by the explosion, now caved in. Parts of it upside down, parts of it sideways, full-on MC Escher, I like it. For some reason, the miners quickly sealed the shaft that led there, claiming the location is cursed by something, but refusing to elaborate. But no seal can stop a band of curious and determined looters or adventurers trying to break in. Excellent, I like that, I like that a lot. I think we have an ancient tomb that has no information on it, so we are going to apply that. And the tomb is in the mines, so we straight wholesale into it. We want that to be secret. Boom. So this would have been a place that will have been something to do with the elves, and then they came across it. Can I ask how you actually use a map like this during play? Is this a DM only map? I found myself making a smaller hex map that I use to keep track of location and quests more precisely when the players have a bigger hex map. So I use this in a couple different ways in play. So it gets used a lot in the prep before a session, but then every game when we start, so let me jump over to my current campaign. So my current campaign is in the Cursed Sands of Ashk. So this is the map that I'm currently playing with. Every session we start on this map, and provided the players are actually on the material plane, which they're not always. But when they are, we start on this map and they use it as kind of a reference, get their bearings, where are we, what are we doing, what's around us. And in Legend Keeper specifically, they can see a lot of these pins and have access to them, so all the ones that aren't kind of transparent, the players can click on and they can see that information, which is what we've been doing with the dual cities as well as we have been making it. You can see some of these locations like Varen Hill, for example. Pull this up and we've got a couple different boxes. So that blue box from the setting guide, that is public to the players. So they see that information, they can learn about the world using this map. Everything in the purple color is a secret, so that can't be seen by the players, and that's where we'll put information that only I, as the GM, is going to see. And then all of our pins that are transparent are hidden pins, so those are things that have got information presently that I don't want the players to even know about. So some locations you obviously don't want the players to have any information about. So if we zoom in here a little to Eldal, you can see that in terms of icons on the map, we have the city of Mornburg, which is named, therefore it gets a public pin because it's important enough that people all across the realm know about it. So the players can click on that and they would be able to see the public information about the city. But then we've got towns and cities, not towns and cities, villages and towns along the way that might have private maps. So I know what they're called in the case of towns. Not in the case of villages. Villages I tend to just make up on the fly, but I know what they're called in terms of towns, and I have some information about them, but the players don't, because the players might be half a country away, and they'd have no reason to know anything about that particular settlement. In Granite, it should be a token of wealth and decency to have a petrified dwarf in your villa or garden. I imagine that there probably would be someone who takes it as like, who takes great pleasure in that. That's a cool villain. Just saying, somewhere we are going to put a villain that keeps petrified dwarves. Maybe they think they can de-petrify the dwarves, and smuggling is basically future slave trade for people who will soon be de-petrified. Maybe. I feel like it's either they want to de-petrify them for join the cause, you know, we are the master dwarves, or it's let's keep experimenting on the effectiveness of Cinder so we can keep ourselves alive longer. Bob says, do the players need a paid account to view? No, they do not. I'm pretty sure they do not. I'm 99% sure they do not. And public viewing is coming to Ledger Keeper very soon. So at the moment, you have to have an account to be able to see things. But pretty soon, I'm just going to mute myself. That's better. So pretty soon, public worlds are coming, so you'll be able to share a link with anyone, and they'll be able to see it. They just won't be able to change anything. Buying petrified dwarves with guardian gnomes is amazing. What's the hex size? And for travel, how close do they have to travel to one of these quest pins for the quest to come active? Is it more loosely based on reference for you as the DM? To be like they travel this hex, or do you get very specific with it? So the hexes currently are 25 miles, and the pins are more kind of loosey-goosey. Here is a thing that exists in this 25 miles. So some of them, for example, like Varen Hill is there. So if you're traveling along this road, you'll travel through Varen Hill. But others, like a shrine, that could be anywhere that works within that 25 miles. So a lot of the random encounters, it's just if the players are going from Varen Hill to this town, they're going to come along this road. At some point in this 25 miles, if it is appropriate, if we have time to have some kind of random encounter, or we want to introduce it, if I want to introduce it, they'd come across a dueling dragonborn, or in the next one they'd come across a traveling knight, or in this one up here it'd be a traveling circus. So a lot of the more points of interesty ones that aren't specific locations, they are just somewhere in this 25 miles. Here is something interesting that could happen, and it's not necessarily something that will happen as they go through. It's more of as the players are moving, kind of say they're going from Topaz and they're moving south. Terrible example because there is nothing. Say they go from Topaz and they're moving east, then I can go, right, okay, after 2.5 days of travel you come across a small village. This village is full of plague for some reason, whatever. Or a day or two outside of this town, you come across an abandoned caravan, or X, Y, and Z. A lot of it is more for me, certainly at this stage, because the campaign hasn't started. When you say, do you mean the side length or the distance between two opposing sides? The distance between two opposing sides. So to cross from one side of the hex to the other is 25 miles or thereabouts. I don't worry too much about specific distances when it comes to kind of this scale. This is well over 1,000 miles, kind of from the southern point of the Empire up to the northern points, well over 1,000 miles. So when we're dealing with kind of sizes this large, especially when we're running a fantasy setting that's kind of pseudo medieval, the coast might look like this on the map, but that's not to say the coast will look like that in real life. Or there's going to be a degree of error. It's been very useful. I'd love to design a simple map that can be used, that I can use and the players can use. I made a Wonder Draft map, but I found myself using Hexographer to make my DM map with my hex key and all that. This seems a lot more simple and faster and efficient. Yeah, I like Hexographer as a good option. It's very information forward, so it's more information forward than it is kind of artistic forward, which is really useful when you're running like a hex-based campaign, a hex crawl, or you have a lot of information you want to convey, because it's all very simple in its presentation and very specific in what it looks like. It's much easier to go look at a hex in Hexographer and go, right, okay, this is this type of mountain, than look at the kind of bleed between plain and mountain in a more artistic map and go, right, okay, well, what actually is the ground around here? What kind of terrain are they actually in? But I like this option because you can present something pretty to the players, because players like shiny things, but then you can still get that level of kind of hex by hex detail by using the pins, which is nice. Let's go ahead and generate something else, some kind of beacon. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a think as to what we could use as a beacon. So this is going to be in the Howling Badlands. So I guess the first thing we need to decide, is it a pre or post explosion beacon? If it were a post-explosion beacon, what would it be used for? If it's pre-explosion, what would it be used for? And who's it belong to? So let's start rolling some dice, I guess. So we're going to go odds and evens. Odds can be the dwarves, evens can be the elves. So it's going to be, that's a 1, so it's going to be dwarf related. Odds will be pre-explosion, evens will be post. So we get nat 20, baby. So that's post-explosion. So some kind of dwarven beacon built post-explosion. So we need to figure out what is it that the dwarves need beacons for. We already have some kind of, like Bob has said, beacons of Minas Tirith, warning style beacons elsewhere in the world. So that's an established thing. But is this a communicating between cities kind of beacon, or is it a beacon to kind of alert everyone in an immediate area about something? I think it'd be cool. It'd be cool to think of a monster that we could deploy somewhere in kind of the heart of the Howling Badlands and have kind of like a lonely tower that stands on watch of the desert for this monster. And when they see the monster, like a lighthouse, to mark the danger, they light this beacon so everyone can see, maybe don't leave your house tonight. Maybe don't go wandering through the desert because whatever this monster is on the prowl. That could be a really cool thing to come across in the middle of the desert. So we're going to go ahead here and make a dwarf beacon and make sure that we've not named it dwarf bacon. I had to double check that like 3 times. So that would be triple check it, right? Or sextuple check it if it was triple checking, double check. You know what I mean. A monster sandstorm. I'm just thinking of the song Sandstorm. We do have a sandstorm kind of point of interest elsewhere in the Badlands, but a warning for sandstorms is quite realistic. Some kind of huge swarm. Yeah, I like a swarm idea. I was initially thinking like a worm, but that feels too obvious, especially since it's not been long since I've used sandworms. So some kind of swarm. That's cool. So this is going to be a specific location, and it is a tower of sorts, so we'll give it a little castle icon. So there exists some kind of swarm. And here, and this tower is designed to warn people when it's about. Swarm. Or is this some... I have no idea what I was supposed to say. Some kind of swarm. Here. Swarm of cinder flying ants. Could have some kind of cinder impact. Maybe swarm. Cinder effects, that could be cool. I think that the problem might be the receiver for my keyboard just isn't close enough, which kind of makes it a real useless wireless keyboard. You have to have it basically to the point where it would be wired. Swarm of cinder effects, maybe made of metal and crystal. Ooh, metal and crystal bugs. I'm sure there will be something that fits that criteria. Probably in Pathfinder Bestiary 3, Cobblebone Swarm. I was just about to say that Bob is going to arrive with exactly the thing to use. Let's have a look. Oh, that's rough. It's a building. Let's have a look. The necromancy artifacts use a horrifying rendering process to strip the flesh and souls off most bones involved, yada yada yada. Commonly, that might be a little bit specific, though I do like the idea of like a swarm of building bits. But we can probably hit, yeah, swarms, monster swarms. Let's have a look. tooth fairy swarms. Stirs Stroma? What are you? Cobble mites that retain a cohesive swarm for many years become dangerous living landslides. That's pretty cool. We could definitely flavor that. It's Bestiary 3. See, Bestiary 3 is always the place to go. I need to buy a copy of Bestiary 3. Yeah, let's go Stirs Stroma. We're gonna rename that because my brain struggles to pronounce it every time. But that is awesome. So let's go ahead and make our monster for that. And that's CR19. And we're going to go ahead and hide that. Hide our pin. And then we'll... so that was Stirs Stroma. Yeah, we'll link that. So this beacon... Maybe this thing, if the Stirs Stroma, the Swarm Rock, Cobble mites. What are cobble mites? Are they their own thing? All in monsters, cobble mite, cobble swarm, cobble mite. Cobble mites resemble squarish stones, a few inches across with mouth-like split geodes. Independent and harmless alone, they're dangerous in large groups. So that a bunch of pet rocks. So this is angry pet rocks. I'm fine with that. So this beacon would exist to pick up signs of this swarm of angry pet rocks on the horizon, and then give warning to the surrounding area. Hey, the pet rocks are out. Maybe don't go walking about because they'll strip the flesh from your bones. Though saying that, as the Vastranada from Silence in the Library. Silence in the Library, the Doctor Who episode, the creatures that exist in the shadows and kind of get inside people's suits and the whole who turned out the lights. Terrifying. We're gonna figure out those. I want those things. Mac, a camel tamer in the settlement in the Badlands. Alternatively, he's Roman and can be found in multiple places. He loves the camels and hates other people, so it may be hard to get him to sell you one of his animals. But you can sure try. May replace the animal with other draft animal that one can expect to find in the Badlands. And like that, let's go ahead and place him somewhere right here. So we want point of interest. In terms of the beast, I'm sure that we'll be able to find something that could be a camel, but I'm sure we'll be able to find a magical beast of burden that could be kind of cool. I feel like that's probably going to be a sit down and look through the bestiary situation. Let's go ahead and have a look at what we can generate next. Dino horses. Could be dinosaurs. Dinosaurs do exist in this world, so it could be he could be a dinosaur peddler. Nothing's jumping out at me now. Gonna have to use my brain. Curses. Right. Zoom out. Let's get a broad view of what's going on here and think about it. High level view. So we've got dwarves versus elves. We've got a radiated surface. So we could probably play into some of those tropes by looking at some other media. So I'm thinking space media. So any representation of like astronauts out in space and kind of the protection of the elements there. Anything in like a post-apocalypse wasteland. Mad Max. Like we're probably going to have some... Oh, the red elves should absolutely be like the wild boys. Shiny and chrome. That would be amazing. And that would be very un-elf-like as well. Oh, yes. Red elves. Where's the page for the red elves? I know it's here somewhere. Let's just link to it. Okay, go. What we're looking at? Animal companions. Let's go ahead and pull that up so we can figure out what's going on. Oh, giant beetle. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, beetle peddler. Right. So red elves. Mad Max inspired. So decked out skiffs, war boys, vibes, shiny and chrome, which means we need a death wagon or doof wagon. Is it doof? Doof wagon? Yeah, I think it's doof. And really lean into that kind of, these elves are a people whose entire world essentially has been destroyed, and it's left them as desert wandering, irradiated nomads. And now that'll provide a really great juxtaposition between our normal elves, who in my world are like, if you think of the highest high elf stereotype that you can, that level of kind of hoity-toity, the white elves of Inyarin, which is where elfdom on Earth started, are very much like that. And having this kind of irradiated, near feral, Mad Max style group of elves would be a really nice contrast to that. Take your classic Bug 11 kid you knew from school, make him a 30-something-year-old riding beetle tamer. Let's make a note on him that it is beetles. A giant beetles tamer. Cool. So we want Mad Max. Want encounters that can reinforce the Mad Max vibes of the skiffs, of the red elves. So we've already got kind of an interaction with the skiffs out there in the world, but it might be cool to find some kind of location where the kind of ferocity element, that real anarchistic kind of unhinged nature that the war boys have got, can really come through. So maybe some kind of experimental skiff that's like much larger than others, and it's kind of like metal. Like that's the main thing in my mind, is it needs to be metal. As have some of the Badlands elves immigrated elsewhere? Or are they still around the Badlands? Maybe you could introduce them as immigrants in your current campaign. That's definitely something that we could look at doing. Where are the players? Players are in the middle of a big old fight at the minute, but yeah, we could look at introducing some red elves somewhere. That would be a nice like teaser for our next campaign. So let's see what a desert sail doing. A skiff, casting a wind spell to fill the sails. That's fine. So let's go more like over this way, and let's go a Cinderlord cheese. That was an incredible yawn. I'm so sorry. Cinderlord trees make up the metal skiffs. Could do. Could have some elements of the old world makeup. Cinder iron. Yeah. Elves and eyes. Yeah. Makes sense that it's about 11 o'clock. Now is usually the time where words become especially hard. Some kind of mega skiff. For now, we're just gonna call it the mega skiff. And we will hide that, and we will shiny and chrome. Just to keep that Mad Max reference. Yeah, would you look at that? Stream Elements doing the Stream Deck's job and posting reminders about the Kickstarter that is running right now. Link in the chat. Let's go ahead and figure out where is looking thin, where we want to focus on. So we're pretty thin down in this pass. So we've got Bloodstone Pass, we've got our big battle that's happened there. We've also got a note that the Subjugator, who was the previous emperor of the Dusk Empire, his weapon may be there. Would be ironic if the elves who once despised the Cinder would end up using it for themselves as fuel for their skiffs, or as ammo for their weapons, or even start consuming it. Ammo for the mega ammo. Fuel for the mega skiff would be pretty cool. And that could kind of sub-faction out the elves, kind of this group of like manic artificers making this mega skiff from cinder iron, and then the mainline red elves being like, "You've become the very thing you swore to destroy." Right, let's have a look in this little valley, Bloodstone Pass. So all kind of here is a big old battle area. We've got an iron giant, we've got a little bit of magic, we've got a dragon cult. Let's go ahead and see what we might have in terms some kind of experimenting wizard. Cool, let's go ahead and drop a necromancer in here. So we're gonna keep this point of interest. And I'm thinking that this necromancer is going to be kind of going around the battlefields that litter this kind of valley and trying to do something with the bodies there. Why is that? There we go. Monster Thrift. Let's go ahead and Pathfinder 2E. What are you? Wall of Heaven claims many intrepid climbers. Some such travellers come seeking fortunes, others seek enlightenment. What are you? You are a large, cold, uncommon, undead. You are grotesque, and I love it. Okay, that's all kinds of horrid. So it's frozen. We can reflavor that easily enough. Reflavor the frozen to be kind of cinder touched. So instead, let's go a cinder touched. How in the seven houses are you supposed? Thyra, Sthyra, Sithra. I feel like there's a vowel missing there. Summoned by some kind of necromancer. And you are going to be CR20. You're a big boy. I copied the image, right? I believe. Let's copy it again to be double safe. Look at that image. I could probably bring that into Photoshop and kind of pull the hues to take the blue whites and shift them red, and give it that kind of cinder vibe, which would be cool. And that's changed to a monster, so we need to change the pin to be head and a little shield and a little skull for our monster. My desk is going mad. Must have hit the timer on it at some point. Right then, so next step, let's have a look. Let's generate something. We're getting a lot that don't fit in the Badlands. A person in distress. What was that? People in distress as traveling encounters. So let's go ahead. We got stuff here. So let's go ahead and drop a pin for someone being in distress. We have no idea what the distress is going to be. But again, these are the kind of pins that we don't need to worry hugely about until the players are in that region. If I know the players are going to kind of come through this region, then it can be applied for whatever makes sense. A partially petrified dwarf is pretty cool. Partially petrified dwarf driven mad by cinder. Attacks passers-by. Perfect. Great suggestion. Let's go ahead and clear out the rewards queue while I remember on mark as complete. Mark as complete, and mark is complete. Excellent. Make sure that I have actually cleared that. Yes, I have. While I'm here and looking at the page again, don't forget to follow if you aren't already. And then let's figure out what we're going to place here. So let's stand up because my butt's gone numb. Let's raise you up so you can see what's going on here. Did we just disconnect something? Are we still live? Very much possibly it did just yank a cable out of somewhere. Oh, well, that's fine then. My second screen just disconnected as I was pulling the desk up. So I've pulled a cable out somewhere. So I now need to reorganize the entire screen because everything is all over the place. Right, bear with me. I'm gonna use this time to take a quick little break, a short intermission, while I figure out what I've just unplugged, and then we'll come back in just a second. Okay, I think that we sorted it. I just need to make sure everything's aligned properly in OBS. As I'd pushed the desk up, it had pulled out the HDMI cable for my second screen. Let's resize that a little, drag that up there. Perfect. Let's double check that we are, yep, everything is working. The day is saved. Right, a partially petrified dwarf as leader of a gang, cult, etc. called something Stoneheart. Could be a cool villain, or at least a well-known figure. He's known for being cold and merciless. I mean, Stoneheart. Stoneheart would be cool. I think that we can probably make some kind of note of something Stoneheart. Has been a gang leader in the dwarf capital. Okay, so now that that technical issue is resolved, how are we doing for time? We are 11:15, so we've got like 45 minutes left. I'm running dry on Badlands stuff, but we have filled out a lot of stuff for the Badlands. Can't hear anything. Let's see. Anyone else can't hear anything? I'm asking this verbally, knowing that there's a good chance that you can. Let me go ahead and pause the music and unmute Twitch, because then I can hear whether I can hear myself. because then I can hear whether I can hear myself, and now I'm confused because I've got my voice in my head twice. Right, so echo, yeah. Right, so I think we're gonna call Howling Badlands done for now. Like, we've got a decent chunk. That's a decent chunk of pins. We like that, so that's fine. Of course, you will have heard me as well. Didn't even think about that. Really need to split out those audio streams. It's gonna come back and bite me one day. So where to next? I'm discombobulated now from the technical issues. Cursed technology ruins all of my plans. Right. Let's figure out where we're going. So, if we're not doing Howling Badlands, let's go back to the random generator. Generic point of interest generator. So, some kind of fort in Aeldal whose dominant citizen is an elf. We've already filled out Aeldal, so we'll skip that one. Maybe the empty center of Ore? Somewhere in the Expanse, maybe. Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and see what we've got in the Expanse. So this region that runs from here all the way down is known as the Expanse. Basically because there's nothing valuable enough there that anyone has ever bothered trying to maintain their dominion there. So everyone's like, this is a big old tract of land with nothing valuable in it. We're not going to devote the resources to manage it. The Algatha says, nice to catch a stream. I've been catching up on the streams on YouTube. Only on the third one now, so it's fun to see how far you've come with the pins. Yeah, we have been busy. I see there are new borders on the map. Yes, there are new borders on the map. So we now have the borders between the Glass Hinterlands and the Expanse, as well as the Expanse and all of the other place. The Wild West. Yeah, very Wild West vibes in the middle. Only without the gold rush or any resource rush, really. There's not a lot going on in the Expanse that any nation would bother with. So it's very much a place of petty kings and small lords and lots of small factions. Is there someone obscure there? Someone no one knows of? Probably. There's probably a lot of things no one knows of. We have the mycelium, the underground fungus fun time place. No one knows of that. Let's have a zoom in and see what we've got. So we've got a couple of roads. We could probably put something there. Let's go ahead and generate a couple. Runes are always good. An unusual weather event. People are sent to map it and went mad. Yeah. Some kind of unusual weather event. Let's go ahead. I know that I have Pathfinder 2nd edition, core books, Lost Omens travel guide. Let's fire up the Lost Omens travel guide and jump right to the end, I think it is, because that has got weather events somewhere, I think. If we can find them. Really should just use the bookmarks. I need to get used to using bookmarks in PDFs. I never do it. Travel guide, weather and climate, and then weather patterns and natural disasters. We don't want natural disasters, we want rare events. Cool. So animal migrations, blood rains, canopy molting, dance of the midnight sun in the far north near the crown of the world. The days stretch on, the nights only a scant few hours, the weekend a glacial wind. Nah, we don't want glacial wind. That's not nearly exciting enough. Let's have a look. Planar portals, storm obelisks, lightning dancing. Stand around the obelisk for 1 week, waiting for the wellspring to overflow and hopefully dodge the lightning that follows. Some kind of lightning storm could be cool. Yeah, let's go lightning. Why not? It's going to be lightning or blood rain, and blood rain feels way too on the nose. So let's go in this empty spot here and create from template, points of interest, and some kind of lightning storm. So if the players are traveling through here, there's going to be some kind of magical freak lightning event. So we'll color it pink so that we know that it is a specific fixed location. I think you did just predict that, yeah. You must have posted it just as I was getting to lightning storm, because I had full page PDF up. Judge 100 lightning strikes in a row to get a special weapon. Some kind of magic. It's a kind of magic. So that's fine. That's all we need for there. We can build on that with the context of everything else in this region once we've actually built it out, which is one of my favorite parts of this style of world building. Is every pin that you add adds new context to all the pins around it. So when you have like big breakthroughs and go, oh, this would be really cool if this really big thing happened here, then it kind of adds new information to every pin around it. Not automatically, obviously. You have to go in and do it yourself. You know, the machines haven't completely taken over, but it's a really fun way of world building because you find like really emergent stories, and it takes you in places that you completely wouldn't expect. I've always attributed writing in general to be an act of discovery and viewed it very much as these things exist, I am just uncovering them. In the process of writing is just uncovering something that always existed. And that approach to world building, and especially when you're doing it on kind of this big scale and adding all the pins and stuff, really comes through when you find that really interesting piece of world building or lore information that you end up putting down. It completely changes everything around it, and then that can have so many knock-on effects that end up changing the entire map. Like, you know, with the Howling Badlands, change the entire map and the look of the map and everything geopolitically in that part of the world from a single kind of discovery point. And, you know, it's a bit pretentiously and writery, but you know, I got a degree for this stuff, so I've got to use it at some point. But it's a fun way of doing world building and discovering things. So what else can we put in our expanse phrasing? Incredible. Some kind of shrines, pilgrims, cult locations, 2 more people having a duel. Nothing is jumping out at me. Usually when nothing's jumping out at me immediately, it means it's either time to move on to a different area, which might be the case here, or it is a case of I don't know why that's in a secret. That's old information. That completely disrupted my train of thought because that's old. Yeah, usually when I'm stuck like this, it means that either the area isn't speaking to me at the moment. In the case of the Expanse, I just don't think haven't found the thing for the Expanse yet. You know, like for the Vale and Novaris, we've got timey-wimey magic stone stuff. For Ealdal, we have the former corruption and the Order of the Silver Gauntlet. The Empire is always pretty easy. Empires are empires, you know, just Empire doing Empire stuff. And then the new Discovering the Howling Badlands, we don't have that for the Expanse yet, which makes it hard to think of things not randomly. Seen a Dr. Frankenstein mad scientist for that, yeah. Subscribe writing and world building and sculpting. We may have a block in front of us, a name to dig out what's hidden inside. Exactly. Some kind of monastery, maybe. Sentient fungus. Just the whole Expanse is just one big mushroom. Could be void of magic, a location where magic doesn't work. We could play with kind of magic and the acceptance of magic. That's something that could come into it somewhere. It's a big place. It might presently it's the Expanse. I'm not 100% sure that it's not going to end up kind of splintering into 2 or more smaller regions that have something going on about it. I'm absolutely fine for the Expanse to kind of be the last thing that gets looked at, though, and uses the context from everything around it to really make it interesting. We also have this like horseshoe-shaped track of land and region, the last region. I don't think we have... no, we don't have a pin for the last region, or any information for it, really. But again, we don't have to worry too much about that. Go ahead and see horse racing. I do think that there is horse racing somewhere. What is the program? I love that it's got all those pins on the roads in other regions. The program is called Legend Keeper. I will drop a link in the chat. Let me see whether my links is working. No, it's not, so I'll copy it over manually. I need to figure out why it's not working. Let me go ahead and resync my... Oh, no, that's going to play. That's going to play my Twitch sounds. Right, has that resynced Twitch with my Stream Deck, so it actually works. Let's try. No, is the answer. That's a frustrating thing that I'm going to have to figure out why it's doing after the stream. Probably a log in, log out situation, I imagine. Navtal's just gone full on mycelim. Like, you've gone mad. You've gone mushroom mad. You cannot be contained. You've completely succumbed to the fungus. Why don't we switch over to Affinity? And I'll show you how I'm getting on with the player's guide, because we haven't looked at that in a couple of weeks. So you can just look at my face while I'm switching it over. I know how much you enjoy that. Traveler's Guide to the Jewel Cities. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we want to open OBS. And then go to our desktop. And make sure that Affinity is working. Okay. There we go. Look at that. It's like I know what I'm doing. So this is Affinity Publisher. It is the program that I use to do all of my layout for SideQuest magazine and the SideQuest annual now on Kickstarter. And it's also what I'm using to make the Traveler's Guide to the Jewel Cities. This is the Player's Guide to the Jewel Cities. It's what I'm going to be giving my players before the campaign starts. I'm also going to be making it available to patrons as well. Hence, it's got the open gaming license in it and all of the legally stuff that means that I can turn this into a product. So we have our map of the Jewel Cities here, and then we have information on time, the world, and calendar. Things that I've been doing this week, I've mainly been focusing on 2 things this week. I've been focusing on language, specifically on trying to change the players' assumptions about language. So it really bugs me that, as is standard presented, especially in D&D, but Pathfinder still does kind of suffer from this, that the assumption is that you'll have common, and then all other languages are specific racial languages. That just doesn't make any sense. So this has got kind of information on where the locations for each of the languages are spoken, and has new languages that are location specific. So for example, if we go and zoom in a little bit, the common language is Talavari Common, but then we have things like Ngawe, which is the language of the Unclaimed Lands and the Usisi Islands. We also have Draconic is Valerosi in my setting, so Valeroth, which was the region of my first setting, their language is very much based on the Draconic language. So the people of Navarra speak that. We have Eruxi, which is the lizard folk. People in Eruxis speak that, and so on and so forth. And then I've arranged those by common and uncommon so that players know what they can take, and then given them a little information on how you're going to gain language. So you get common, which is Talavari common, and each ancestry will give you access to one or more specifics linked to your ancestry. And then if your intelligence is high enough, you can take a common language or get approval for an uncommon language. So it's a draconic dialect. It's a dialect rather than another name for the whole draconic language, but anyone that speaks, or almost anyone that speaks draconic in the Jewel Cities, will be speaking the Valerosi dialect, because that's how it will have come across. Thank you for stopping by, much appreciated. Enjoy your sleep. And then the other thing that I've been kind of building out in the player's guide is talking about currency and moving to a silver standard currency and giving them, the players, kind of an in-world look at how currency works. So currency in the Jewel Cities, it's silver standard, and the standard coin is a laver, which is a silver piece that is minted specifically to be cut into pieces. So if you go into a store and pretty much any store in the Jewel Cities, all of the merchants kind of behind the till have got a little die cut set. So they've got like a little mallet and a little handheld coin cutter. So if you go and you want to pay for something and it costs less than a laver, and you hand them a laver, they will strike the coin and cut off the amount that they need. You cannot put the pieces back together. I will talk about how they get around that in a second. But a laver is made into 10 pieces. That is a game consideration, because I'm very aware that I don't want to have to go and convert a system that is built on a base 10, so 10 copper into a silver, 10 silver into a gold. I don't want to have to change that to a different base number, so I made the laver struck into 10. Really, it would be a smaller number, because 10 seems like a lot of pieces to have. But anyway, you can chop them into 10 pieces, and those pieces are known as bits. So a lot of things like an ale, a mug of ale, I think would be 1 bit, which is worth one copper piece elsewhere. So anything in the rules that's listed in copper is bits, anything in silver is laver, and then anything in gold is a number of laver. Very few people will have actual gold coins. Most of them will string 10 laver together to make a crown. A crown that you could actually wear on your head. But that would be equivalent to 1 gold piece. If they remain separated, it seems like people will just start using bits as the standard currency. Bits will very much be the majority currency that you would use day to day for most people. So a business, your employer would pay you in laver. You would then buy most of your goods in bits, unless you're paying rent or buying more expensive things that, plus a laver. Even then, you might still use bits. And then in terms of how does it work with them being separated, what I'm thinking is that local businesses would either go to the bank or have someone that comes around and collects bits and exchanges them for laver. So you might have a bank in a city, and that bank might mint new coins. So businesses can take their bits from the day to the bank, get new laver for them, and then they would take all of the bits, melt them down, and cast new laver. Develop ways to easily store bits rather than laver. It sounds like a very convoluted system. It is essentially the system that certainly medieval England used for hundreds of years. That's what it is based on. So for, I can't remember how long, a long time, the primary coin in medieval England was the penny. And when you look at old pennies, a lot of them have strike lines on them. So they could be cut into 4, which would get how you get a halfpenny, a halfpenny, and how you get, I can't remember what they would use for the 4th of a penny. You could magically mend labour back. That's a good shout. But yeah, that is how currency did work. Certainly in medieval England, for a good period of time, coins were struck. Eventually, coins come along and replace the smaller denominations. But my main kind of reasoning behind this is it's another touch point to make the players connect with the world and believe that, have some level of belief in the world. Chat settings. Where's my chat settings? Because when there's a separate kind of coin, instead of being like, oh, that'll be a copper, you can say that's a bit. It adds a new kind of location and setting specific nomenclature that they can really kind of latch onto and becomes part of the world. Let's go ahead and do this. Do that. I can see unscrupulous individuals melting bits and going without going to the bank. Absolutely. You have many cities with rock titles. What about knightly orders of metals, order of iron, order of lead? We do have an order of the silver gauntlet, and I think there might be another couple of knightly orders that have metal-based names. Let's go and have a look. We want factions. So we've got the Order of the Silver Gauntlet, we've got the Order of Dawn, Order of the White Raven, and the Order of Twilight presently. It's laver and bits used throughout the region, or some use copper throughout the region. So the laver is the Talavari coin, so everything in almost this whole continent is going to use laver and bits. And same with the common language. So if we go ahead and jump through to the world show. So this is the continent of Talavar, and then the island of Or, and the region that is the Jewel Cities. So for a good period of time, certainly during and immediately following the subjugation, most of Talavar was united under the subjugator's banner. So a lot of things within this region have become kind of standardized. So the laver, the common language being Talavari common. So that's where a lot of the default assumptions for things is continent wide, which means keeps it easy if you go and find yourself in a slightly different place than the Jewel Cities. If you go into Talavar itself, it means that you can still use all your coinage. Something has to be named after Electrum. It's too cool of a name not to be used. Electrum as a coin just sucks. I've not once in any campaign or any game I've ever run has anyone ever actually wanted Electrum. Like, it is a cool name, and I like the idea of using Electrum for like a magical currency or using it in specific places. But oh, not Electrum as a coin, just as the alloy. Oh yeah, the alloy is cool. Thinking of your center countries, several regions each controlled by a knightly order with metal names, with a king, queen, the silver of gold. That could be cool. Could incorporate some metals in there. They'd probably be named for being close to those metals though, and then there are resources in there that would prompt nations to kind of dominate the region. So that presently the whole idea with the Expanse is that there's nothing worthwhile in there, or nothing worth enough for one of the surrounding nations to go in and be like, this is mine and I'm going to spend resources to protect it. Unless that changes, unless we throw the idea of the Expanse out, that probably not going to go down the metal knightly orders in that region. But I do like using the metal names for knightly orders, or incorporating them into. In my spreadsheet, my master book, I'm in the process of building kind of a free company generator, and one of the things that I want to build into that is a name generator that takes, kind of a descriptor like a type of metal or a color, as well as like an animal or something. So like the Silver Gauntlet, that kind of generation for name as well. Electrum order would be an alliance of some golden order and the order of Silver Gauntlet as well. Electrum, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what I've been doing in the player's guide this week, is getting the currency and the languages set up. I don't think we're too far off with the player's guide. There's a couple more regions to figure out what's going on with and kind of tighten up the introduction, and then we're on to pastimes and what people know in the player's guide, which should be a lot of fun. Are there Electrum Dragons? I don't know off the top of my head if there are Electrum Dragons. You're thinking of large caravans and moving towns. That could be pretty interesting, having like more of a mobile society within the Expanse. That could be pretty cool. Gets us into more of the Wild West territory with, you know, the keep those wagons rolling. And I think that if we are going to keep the Expanse as it is, then playing into that Wild West element is probably the way to do it, and take some of those tropes of certainly the travel and the lawlessness and some of the vibe of the Wild West, the tone of Wild West stories, even if we don't adopt kind of the gold rush and the expansionist element of the West. It'd certainly be one way to do it. How are we looking for time? We are almost at midnight. So I'm going to do what we usually do at the end of most streams. Say most streams, every stream. Have like 15-20 minutes of general chat, which is kind of longer than that because that's what we've been doing anyway. But yeah, we usually end off these streams with more kind of general chit chat, and it's a chance for folks to ask questions not necessarily directly related to the things we've been doing in the stream this evening. So if you have questions about the world or about the programs that I use, whether it be map making or Legend Keeper, or just in general questions about GMing or TTRPGs or any of that stuff, go ahead and throw them down into the chat. While you're thinking of questions, without being able to press all of my buttons, which is very, very upsetting, I will go ahead and start giving you my weekly spiel. So very first off, if you're not already following the Twitch channel, go ahead and drop a follow. We are like one follower away from our weekly goal. So we're currently on 389 and our goal for the week is 390. So we're one follower away. So if that's you and you're watching and you haven't followed, go ahead and hit the follow button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And it prompts a little banner in the chat and everyone can clap and give you a round of applause. I also make... here comes trouble. I also make YouTube videos about all things gaming. This week I am going to be making my first Pathfinder character for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm going to be documenting my whole process for that, making a video on that tomorrow to come out on Friday. The biggest thing I've got going on at the moment is my side quest annual Kickstarter, which is taking the first 12 issues of my monthly magazine side quest and bundling them together in a hardback book and making them available in print for the very first time. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to that. Go ahead and check that out, see if it is of interest to you and if you want to support it. I can't post any of my other links because none of them are working, so that's the most important one for this week. And I'll drop the Discord in because I have made the Jewel Cities channel in the Discord public now, so if you want to continue the discussion about the Jewel Cities and about what's going on there and see kind of my in-between stream development, that will be over on Discord. Let's go ahead and read through. For the Barons may have towns based on Mortal Engines. I've still not seen Mortal Engines. Mortal Engines was one of those films that I saw it and thought, that's a really cool concept, but I know the film will flop. And lo and behold, it did. This could be timed to the Desert Elves, maybe. They're already nomads with the skiffs and whatnot. Maybe make them centered around mobile settlements that grew into large mobile towns. That would be pretty metal. That's very Mad Max. We might have to Mortal Engines the Red Elves. Currently working on a campaign with an Egyptian theme. Any suggestions from Ashk? My biggest suggestion is find a way to introduce some other biomes as well, because playing in a single biome for like 2 years can get kind of taxing. There's only so many ways to describe a desert and only so many environmental things that you can do with a singular biome, especially when it's one as narrow as desert. Temperate climates are easier to work with because they have like a greater fluctuation in the seasons. So that is why the Jewel City specifically is so large, because we can cover a lot more kind of climate regions and have the seasons affect it more, so you get more interesting weather stuff. But in terms of going specifically for like Egyptian-y, desert-y type stuff, always good for like lots of lost civilization stuff, buried tombs. The dog is barking, just ignore him. And I would say go ahead and check out the how to make a homebrew campaign playlist that I've got on my YouTube channel, because that's me going through the whole process of building Ashk. Excellent Poog. Yeah, the Poog was the goblin that I played in the Pathfinder First Edition Weeby Goblins this weekend, and then we're going to play the Weeby Goblins 2 as a Pathfinder game in next month, and I'm super excited about it because it means, one, I get to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the first time, and I get to carry on playing as Poog, which is fun, but I also get to be a Thaumaturge, and ever since Dark Archive came out, I've been chomping at the bit to be a Thaumaturge. Going back to the Jeweled Cities, you could have a Haradrim theme, but with dinosaurs. You could definitely incorporate some dinosaur riding elements into the Howling Badlands. Navtal says, welcome one, check the shipping cost for the Kickstarter is on the main page. There are 2 estimated costs on there, one for the UK, one for the rest of the world. The rest of the world one represents the maximum that we were quoted from the producer. So went to them, I was like, hey, want you to do fulfillment, what are the prices? And they're like, without an exact list, we can't give you an exact price, so here's the most expensive price. So chances are whatever the price is on there won't be what you end up paying, but that's the maximum, kind of the higher end that it'll be. For Egypt, it's quite interesting. It has some swamps and Greenland close to the Nile and desert. There's also one of the longest empires to exist. Yeah, that's a very good point. Kind of a lot of the differences in climate are going to come around sources of water and stuff like that, and that can be a good way to choose where to put your cities and stuff, just in general anyway. Thanks for stopping by, Bob. Lovely to have you in the chat, and enjoy your sleep. I'm going to hydrate so if you have any final questions kind of before we wrap up, throw them down in the chat. I know you mentioned playing Warhammer. What armies do you play? I pulled their Fantasy Planescape for my wider planes. So I used to play 40k and I've played, a whole bunch of armies in 40k. Space Marines were always my mainline ones. Imperial Fists. In fact, just this week, I was working on yet another test scheme for Imperial Fists, because painting yellow sucks. It's not so much that it's hard, it's just time consuming, and I'm busy and I don't have time, so I'm constantly trying to find new ways to paint yellow. I'm pretty pleased with this one. I primed in like a magenta-y pink, zenithalled it, and then hit it with some contrast, and it's come out pretty nice. So I'm going to look at picking up some pink primer rattle cans. But I have played a whole bunch of armies. In terms of Warhammer Fantasy, I've never actually played Warhammer Fantasy, I don't think. But I do have an undead skeleton army that I painted in a week that I 3D printed for a video last year. That was a lot of fun. And I've also got a Night Haunt army that I've never played, and is like 1 unit is painted. Have you read any of the Paizo APs? Have I read any of the Paizo APs? I've started reading Kingmaker, yeah, the new 2nd edition version of Kingmaker. I've flicked through some of that and have been enjoying that. There's a lot of interesting kind of open world stuff to pull from that. I started reading it whenever the PDFs went out to backers. I started reading that and then got distracted, so I haven't gone back to it. I'm pretty sure the Kickstarter might have something to do with that. But I really enjoyed what I read of it, and I have been meaning to check out the Abomination Vaults for ages. I've got the PDFs for the Abomination Vaults, and I've been meaning to check them out for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it. Thought about how to do Pathfinder to be more like 5e hardcore mode. I'm not super familiar with 5e hardcore mode. We hit follower goal, thank you very much. So if you give me the cliff notes on what makes 5e hardcore, then I can tell you what I feel about it. Not sure if I've asked this before, but how much of SideQuest is usable for world builders who aren't running D&D and Pathfinder? A reasonable amount of it. So all of the mechanical stuff is 5th edition, but most issues have at least one article that has more general appeal. So the kind of the general format tends to be a fantastic location in each issue and a monster in each issue, and then a rotating kind of other 2 articles per issue. So the fantastic locations, some of them have 5e specific mechanics, but most of them it's just lore. It's here is a place like one of the pins we have here that you can put into your fantasy world. So some of the places, like I'm sure that one of the places around here is going to make it into a futurish. So the Cave of Screaming Tomorrows. That's got timey-wimey stuff. Whatever this place is going to end up in a future issue of SideQuest, because the Cave of Screaming Tomorrows is a hella cool name. And that is one of my primary criteria for the fantastic locations. When I get the writers to pitch things, I'm always like, if your fantastic location's name doesn't grip me, we're probably not going to go with it. Like, I need to be immediately gripped by the name so I can imagine seeing it on a map as a player and going, what is that? What is the Cave of Screaming Tomorrows? I have to know what that is. So fantastic locations tend to be like 90+% system neutral. Then each issue tends to have a monster, the stats of which are 5e specific, the lore of which is system neutral. And then the other 2 articles per issue are kind of a rotating band. So sometimes there's class player information for 5th edition, but sometimes there are more GM advice, like how to run a horror game and how to maintain horror over an extended period of time, and more articles like that. Best thing to do when it comes to seeing if you are interested in each individual issue is keep an eye on the Drive Thru RPG page, because each issue that goes up has got a summary of what's included. Still playing Pathfinder 1st edition, D&D 3.5. Do you have any great 1E stories from when you played and thoughts on the system? I have a billion stories for 1E. So we played 1st edition Pathfinder for a little bit over 2 years, I want to say. We ran from level 3 to level 20. I think we started at level 3. I don't think we started at level 1. But we went all the way up to level 20. And level 20 Pathfinder, 1st edition, is absolute bonkers. The players were just so incredibly powerful. And like breaking time, casting wishes, doing all manner of like war crime level power. Trying to keep up with that is always hard. But I think that in Pathfinder 3.5, it was more fun than it was a chore as a dungeon master to run high level stuff, because you get to the point where you're like, everything is so absolutely ridiculous and everything is doing just utterly insane maneuvers. Whereas running high level 5e is tedious. It's just every monster is wildly underwhelming, and the system just doesn't like being high level. And war crimes, yes, war crimes, multiple. 5e is a system whereas Pathfinder 1st edition felt like it was like, hey, nothing here is balanced, but we're at least making it kooky and fun. 5th edition is like, nothing here is balanced, and we're not making it any more interesting than it was at first level in terms of like the options we're giving you, which really sucks. Is currently, because we are playing high level 5th edition, my biggest gripe with the system. So many of the monsters are so boring when you run them like as is. Totally random question. Ever try out AD&D 2nd edition? My group and I are absolutely loving it so far. I haven't. I have read several of the products, or skimmed several of the products from that line, and pretty soon I'm going to be taking some of the old T series adventures from way back when. I don't even think it was second edition. I think it was still just first. Some of the really old adventures, and we're going to be reading through them on stream, which will be a lot of fun. We might do that next weekend. Depends on... I need the time to sit down and kind of skim through them first to get an idea of what I'm going to structure the stream with, rather than just going in completely blind and being like, hey guys, watch me read for 2 hours. But once I've had the chance to do that, we're going to do a crack open the old adventure stream, and that should be a lot of fun. Navtal, I dropped the drive-through link in the chat, so all of the issues get published on there same day as they go up on Patreon. You save some money on the Patreon, and I do put up previews of each issue available to everyone on Patreon as well. But Drive-Thru RPG is there as well. Right. We're coming up on midnight, so I'm going to call it there because I really need to take an antihistamine. I've become very congested. Don't know if you can tell by how I sound. So I need to take an antihistamine and see if that clears it. Or whether it's just my brain is swelling and this is the end. I don't think that's the case. But it has been a pleasure as always. I hope that you found the stream enjoyable and useful, and it's inspired some creativity in you. Go and look below the stream. There's the links to all the things, you know how the internet works, and follow me in all the places, and check out the side quest Kickstarter. If you take away nothing else, that's the one to take away. I'll be doing this again next week, same bat time, same bat channel, 10 p.m. UK time, Sunday evenings, and hopefully next week we'll do the old school adventure kind of read through and review. That should be a lot of fun. But until next time, happy gaming.